two, one, live.
There it is, and it did it again. We're live. How are you guys doing? Welcome.
Well, we're happy to join you on the Kevin Letterman show.
Yes.
Host.
What an evening it's been. What did you guys do last night? Did you stay safely inside?
Yes, we were inside, but our friend, he lives just off of Melrose and Fairfax. That was just almost outside his house. So crazy shit going on.
Yeah, I always find it very terrifying, and it serves a purpose and everything. But with the whole, the self-isolation already going on and everything, it just sort of seems to put an extra level of edge onto everything.
But does the looting really serve a purpose?
Yeah, no, unfortunately I got into that last night on my Facebook, and I had like over 600 comments about it. So I kind of got on the wrong side of being semi-misinterpreted because, when you associate any form of rioting and try and separate one form of it to the other, it's kind of like saying, well, there's no fairness in murder either. So you can't separate out anything. So it all comes part and parcel, which I fully understand.
But I understand the protesting about the violence, but what's the point of protesting and using violence and, damaging things if you're supposed to be protesting against violence? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I always thought that that also people, are getting hurt by the fact that a lot of the shops are owned by small, the small shops owned by families who've spent their whole life building up these things, and so it is affecting other lives. And so that was my concern. Originally, I think I've been called a pacifist, but basically, I feel concerned for everybody who's currently in harm's way, and the whole George thing, that was just atrocious. I mean, it was like the worst thing I've ever seen. But then the follow-up too has been pretty hardcore as well, and I'm sure it won't stop here. I mean, there's got to be major reform in the system. There's no doubt about that. But John, you're from the UK. I haven't been formally introduced to.
This is Angela. This is Kevin Key, or Kevin Letterman, should I say? As we're
I'm sorry, Angeletta?
Angela Picard, actress, jewelry maker, film star, songstress.
He's funny.
All of the above.
Where are you originally from?
California. I was born here in California.
Awesome. So you can relate. I find that my California friends are kind of like educating me about. I'm from Canada, so I think I bring in a different perspective. I don't understand the essence of what it's like to actually grow up here and truly understand the vibe of the entire depth of the city. So I get lost sometimes, even though I've lived here for 22 years.
I mean, there's just absolutely so much,
Yeah.
house to house, neighborhood to neighborhood, and just I don't know. You take into account there's people that are and people that aren't on the forefront of everything that's highly political. Some people just would rather live a easy, peaceful life. And then there's other people that are just angry, and you can understand that. And you can feel, as an artist, you can feel their frustration also. Like if you're anybody that can feel a vibe, you can feel it through your walls, and it can get really heavy sometimes. So all the things that are happening in our communities right now, there are layers and layers of frustration and straight up cabin fever for some people. But there's a lot of unrest. I think we're going to see it for a while, but I'd like to see it in ways that,
doesn't cause harm to others.
We just don't want to see people getting hurt. We hate to see quite literally a civil war on our own lands.
And John, you've just been living here for a couple of years now. Being from the UK, you've seen a lot of rioting and things like that, I'm sure, in your past.
I've lived through a lot of shit, with the IRA and, the ISIS bombers. I've lived around the corner from things being blown up, when the the race riots, you know, with Thatcher, and I've seen a lot of this shit, yeah. But it doesn't, you know, what they're doing now doesn't actually solve anything. They're actually making it worse, you know.
So is this striking a new chord? It's not. It doesn't feel like the same type of vibe that you would have felt in the riots you have witnessed earlier.
Well, it's like if they had held back, you see, there's protests going on around the world now. You know, there's this big, you know, in London, they all come out on the streets to protest about this. So it actually affected a lot of people around the world, you know, seeing a person, you know, unnecessarily killed like that. But these riots are turning people against them where they should be getting people on their side and having passive protests, because this just makes other people angry against them, you know, because they're killing shopkeepers' lives that they may have, you know, they may have had their stores for 40 years and all of a sudden, you know, it's been smashed up, it's been looted, they have nothing left. And then they go to the insurance, and you know, the insurance people are going to say, well, this was an act of God, so we can't pay out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just destroying things that don't need to be destroyed.
Yeah, I mean,
in my opinion, you know, it's like
yeah.
there's going to be a million opinions out there, but anyway.
Before this, I was talking to you about inspiration and how have you been inspired through all this, the lockdown and everything. And you were saying that you've been in the studio each day and everything. Are you currently creating new music around all of this scenario?
I'm writing with Azam Ali, doing some songs with her, and I'm going to write another album for Fakiba, but mainly been mixing. I started working on the new Stabbing Westward album. Been working on the cover for our covers album, like Black Needle Noise covers album, which is going to come out through Cleopatra.
Busy.
Yeah, we're getting the CD. Actually, we're working on the cover for the CD of the first Black Needle Noise album, Before the Tears Came. And finished the video with Pig with Raymond that came out a couple of weeks ago. Got a lot of attention. Great video if you haven't seen it.
Right on.
No, we try and keep busy.
Keep creating, but keep collaborating too.
Yeah.
You know, working with other artists, because I mean, if you're not, I mean, you just get too lonely and too weird anyway.
We're working with our friend Cosmo as well on some music he's made.
Shadow Unit.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of, you know, this collaboration time to, you know, and I work with people around the world to collaborate and bring them in.
And so you guys together make Black Needle Noise, is that correct?
Well, Black Needle Noise is like a family, like a community, like a family thing. So, you know, I've worked with Bill Lee from, you know, he's a Canadian. And I've worked with Akiba, she's African, and worked with people from across Europe, England, America. It's like a global entity.
So it's, yeah, a label entity. So it can take on any member, and you do perform under that name though, right?
Yeah, we did South by Southwest shows, the first shows, and there's if you go on YouTube, you can find there's a little documentary about those two shows. Then to promote the second album that we brought out, Lost in Reflections, we did a world tour of Hollywood, which was fun. We'd like to do more show. We're supposed to be going down to Chile, but that keeps getting brought back because
we're supposed to be down there in December.
This December, playing in Chile.
That would be a nice place to be in December, I would think.
Well, it's supposed to be the eclipse too. It's supposed to be a really big deal at that time period, so we're hoping to be there in time.
And isn't it warm down there in December?
Yes, because it's holiday season for a lot of people, but it's really, really nice below in the other southern hemisphere.
But actually, it's a good week. Lucky we put it back a week and didn't do it last week, because this week is the 40th anniversary of Fireside Favorite from Fat Gadget.
Oh my God. I mean, you know, I have to say,
I knew you did it for timing. I knew it.
Mega fan, you know, I mean, it just so happens to be that, you know, my life was basically formed around the first time I heard this.
Right.
It's the first time I ran to the DJ booth and I had to know, what is that? I actually thought at first they were saying radio sign. I'm like, what is that radio sign song? Radio sign, it's not radio sign, it's Ricky's Hand. But, you know, from this point on, I had to, I would drive to a city to find a 7-inch.
Right.
You know, and then I'd go through their you know, 7-inch section and just find all these. But, you know, Fireside Favorites was really this cat. This whole time I'm talking to you, she's biting me, biting my leg. Okay, settle down.
She needs to be on screen. Come on.
Yeah, I know. She really does. But I was just listening to the album yesterday because I just wanted to remind myself of it, of course, before we spoke. But what a timeless record. I mean, what are your memories and how did you get there?
Well, it's a weird one because I joined the studio, started working in the studio like 1980.
Blackwing Studio.
Blackwing, yeah, in London. Blackwing, London, yes.
How did you join?
Well, I went there with my friends to record some demos because I wasn't a great musician, so I just helped them out with live sound. And then we went to the studio for them to make some demos, and I just went along to see how things were done. And then, but I was in the photography world at the time, working for an art studio. And then I got, as you say in England, made redundant, you know, let go from a job. And Eric wanted someone to work in the studio. So it's like, hey, I need a job. You need someone to work here. And it was like, okay, start now. And then, you know, I left years later.
Eric Radcliffe.
Yeah. And then one of the first records I was ever involved with was Silicon Teens, which was Daniel Miller's.
Oh my God, I love that album.
So the first album, I'm like doing backing vocals and hand claps and shit like that.
I mean, so there was a club in Vancouver, Canada, from, you know, my experience of it was like in the late 70s through the early 80s. But the setup of it and the sound system in it and the way the persona of the club was largely catering to gay, tranny, sort of, you know, alternative at the time people. Yeah. The first time I went in there, it changed my life because it was the first time that I'd ever heard this style of music. And so, you know, I began to run to the DJ booth like way too often. And so eventually I just decided I better get a job here. And so I became the unpaid light man, just so that I could look at every record that would go on the turntable and then store it and then go find them. And so, yeah, Silicon Teens was also among the first, because we played that in the club and then we went on to all the fad stuff. But I don't know, man, there's a mystique to me about, like, we had that scene to inspire us and to go by. And we're just amazed, you know, at how it was opening doors. But what is it that did that for you guys? How did you guys open a door to get there, to make that music?
Well, it was different because, okay, so Fad actually came out of the punk scene. So he approached the electronic music like a punk artist, you know, so we had a synthesizer, then we would run it through like distortion pedals or, you know, whatever we had in the studio. So, you know, he kind of approached electronic music more with a punk ethos. Because at that time, you know, people were so used to guitar bands. It was like, it's like when Depeche Mode first started out, they were getting reviews like, how can they be a band when they haven't got guitars? You know what I mean?
Right.
Then it kind of, you know, and then you had Gary Newman with the Two-Way Army starting out. So electronic music like kind of grew out the punk scene. And then it went through, you know, it kind of morphed. And then you had like the goth scene come out of that and the New Romantics. So that all kind of transformed out of the punk scene. Because you had you know, in England, well, I don't know what it's like in America, but in England at the time, it was all anti-establishment. And then you had all the indie labels. So all the, you know, the 80s was a very creative time. And all the indie labels, you know, all the people that run the indie labels loved music, loved art. So it was all, you know, it was all for art until later when all the majors bought the indie labels up because it was having too much success for them, and they kind of destroyed what the ethos was.
I thought like the most amazing thing though is how to know when something's right. So when you guys are making a new style of music and you're hearing this and someone has to say, hey, this is right. The sound of the drum is right. The sound of the ashtray is right. I mean, I see your credit is ashtray. So I mean, how do you know when the ashtray is right?
You've been reading the credits. You know I played ashtray and chair. Yes. Please wake up.
But those made great percussive devices. I've been known to play chairs in my career as well. Who was overseeing, like, say, the final say? Was it like Daniel Miller, like, riding in the background, or did someone have a particular feeling and then everyone said, hey, wait, that's right?
Well, it wasn't, but that's the beauty of music. There is no right and wrong. It's just whatever you feel at the time. There's no, the only thing I say about music is the only rules are the rules to be broken. So what we tried to do back then was break all the rules. If an ashtray, but it was always, this is how I grew up in the music industry. It's like whatever it takes to make the sound is right. Whether that's playing an ashtray, whether it's playing a synthesizer, through something else or whatever. It's whatever it takes to make the sound that you have in your mind. And it's not always a conventional way to get there, but as long as the end result is what you want, it doesn't matter. Well, to me, it doesn't matter. There's purists out there saying, oh, you have to do this and that, but to me, that's not what it's all about.
Are you getting an LA warning too?
Public safety alert. If you live in LA, you know what this is.
As of 8 o'clock tonight, we're on shut till 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, you got to be home. That's what that says. That says be alert, folks. Yeah, that's the real world calling in. Well, John, I know we've talked about this before, but I always talk to you. Well, so what was the structuring? And you were talking about an ARP sequencer, and I gather that means you were using the ARP 2600 for the mainstay of a rhythm.
Well, that was Daniel's. Because we got to use everything Daniel had. He would bring in all his keyboards, and then he would, sometimes if something new just came out, like the Linn drum, I remember him driving down. I remember he drove down to Devon to get the first prototype and bring it back in the studio so we could try out, the Linn drum. So whatever was to hand, we could use. But normally the kick and snare drum were from the ARP, yeah. But we worked out a way of recording, the gate signal onto tape and then running it back. So at least we could run the sequencer twice. So you had the original run, putting out the cEvin gate. We recorded that, so then we could play it back. So we got like 2 passes. But the first 1 or 2 albums from Fad and Depeche Mode and Silicon Zig, it was all done on 8-track.
So was it hand played parts from there?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the type of stuff I like to hear. It's because, like, sometimes, yeah, if you hand play parts, it sounds great when you perform the part great. It's just you can't really actually make it better with a sequencer sometimes.
But that was, back then it was before Synthi came along, before MIDI came along, before Roland had the Roland tone and Yamaha.
Yeah.
So we just had to make the best of what we could. We pushed, technology to as far as we could at the time.
And so you gravitated towards, were you like the engineer on the recordings, or were you overseeing like the way mics were set up, or?
Well, it was kind of, it took me like a year in the studio to get to be engineering and co-producing.
Yeah.
It's weird because it's like I was a duck to water, I was just thrown in at the deep end. And after a year I could swim around and make things happen. And because I could never keep my mouth shut, people seem to like what the ideas I had. So then, after a kind of like after a year being working in the studio, I was co-producing stuff, and then a couple of years in, I was producing people's records. So it happened pretty fast for me.
So was the whole Depeche Mode Speak and Spell experience something that was sort of hand in hand next to Fad Gadget? Was it that close by that you were still integrated in the same sort of setup within the room and just changing characters?
Yeah. Yeah, that was all, yeah, probably done around the same time.
And so you would have used similar technology and possibly similar sync and similar maybe effects or routing, and or each of these bands would carry in their own gear, or they'd all use Daniel's gear.
No, it's Depeche had some of their own stuff, and when they signed to Daniel, they bought new stuff. But yeah, but whatever Daniel had was for use for the studio. And he was kind of producer of, I guess he was producer of the Speak and Spell album. But with Fad, Fad was more of his own, own self.
Oh, so what got you going in these sessions? What about them inspired you? What's your takeaway from, say, being around Fad Gadget and being around sort of the formation of like all these seminal classic electronic albums that you partook in?
But I've been at the forefront of quite a few genres and working with bands at the beginning of different styles of music, and I guess a good thing for me anyway. I don't settle just for being in, I only do electronic music, I only do rock music, I only do punk music, I only do rock music. I've worked with everyone from Cradle of Filth, which is black metal, to Cocteau Twins, which is ethereal.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I was making my way. Okay, so that's a story in itself. Is that you're instrumental in sort of like the creation of like everything that inspired the early wave electro clubs, but then you also come in and basically create an environment with Cocteau Twins and This Mortal Coil. There's like this whole new ethereal world that is like a completely different tangent once again, but once again like just nailing it as far as like the overall scope of like of what you're trying to do. So again, like those sessions intrigue me as to what the vibe was like on how you were going to try and capture this material and make it like as unique as it turned out.
It was just a creative time. We didn't always have a lot of time in the studio, but there was a lot of experimentation. And I've made art records for art's sake, and I've made serious records, all the records with like Graham Lewis and Bruce Gilbert, that duet MO, and they were very arty. One record I remember, I can't remember what project it was, but we recorded, I think it was Graham and Bruce playing chess, scraping the chess pieces across the board. That was the soundtrack for one song.
That's the type of recording I like. I like stories like that too. Any stories that you have like that, I'm always itching to hear them.
Yeah, and then we did another one, another track which was just hum from the amplifier. We just tuned it different tones and things. Then we recorded that for 6 minutes, and then used the faders to manipulate the sound and orchestrate it, and then that was another song. So there's a lot of experimentation going on some bands. Some bands, came in and wanted to record their songs, their art in different ways. So for me, it was a great time to be in the studio and be around everybody.
Were you getting that response from the people in the UK though? The way that we kind of saw it as, wow, English new wave. It was like, it had already its own ambiance. But so when you were creating there, did you feel like that you had latched onto a scene right away that people were supporting, or did it start off small and grow with each of those things?
It started off small, and and grew. It's really funny with 4AD, where before the Cocteau Twins, I remember reading in the NME, and it would be like another shit record on 4. This would be the review. Another shit record on 4AD. That would be that would be it. And then I was signed the Cocteau Twins, and then John Peel, if you remember from Radio 1, he championed the Cocteau Twins, and all of a sudden it was like 4AD is this amazing label. They have the Cocteau Twins. You know, everything kind of turned upside down on its head. You know, and then it kind of flew from there.
I was always a huge fan of This Mortal Coil. So was that more of a like a love of Ivo? Is it Ivo, or was it you? Was it you both that had an itch to scratch?
And that was a strange project because basically it started around modern English.
Wow.
And Ivo wanted. There was 2 songs, modern English, 16 Days and Gathering Dust, and if I remember right, when they played it live, they kind of played it live as a medley, you know, the 2 songs merging into each other. And Ivo wanted them to record them like that. And they said, no. So he said, okay, then I'll do it myself. And they said, okay, go ahead. So we did that. And then Song to the Siren was just the B-side, the throwaway B-side. And that kind of catapulted This Mortal Coil from there, because everyone loves Song to the Siren, and it's become the classic that it is today. But it was really just a throwaway B-side when we recorded it.
Is there a reason? I mean, you don't have to tell me, but is there a reason why they didn't continue? It seemed like they were such successful projects. Is it just that there's a period for a band and then it has to kind of like not be?
Well, This Mortal Coil was never a band. The only 2 consistent components were Ivo and myself.
Yeah.
It was all just, you know, different artists joining in, but it got harder. It's like the more successful it got, the harder it got for Ivo to get other people involved, because, you know, managers then got in the way, and it's like, oh, then we need X amount of money and blah, 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 blah. And so it kind of became too stressful to make the project work anymore.
Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in London?
Yeah, I am a Londoner, yes.
What was
it? Just left.
Were you a punker before punk, or was it like, did you follow the scenes, or what got you into music?
I don't know. It's like, I've always been, it's kind of another version of art. You know, when I was a child, I used, you know, started off drawing with pencil and painting and photography, and then music. It's always been like, my whole life's been around art, just different versions of it.
Usually there's one person that, like, you know, that inspires you to pick up that instrument, or, you know, take it to the next level, or to go into a studio or join a band. Was there that one person that came along that said, okay?
It's because, like, I have an older brother, and he, you know, he is like 4 years older than me, but he started getting into music, you know, before me. So I was listening to like Lou Reed and, you know, Velvet Underground and all these bands that he was buying. So I was listening to the music, and then, you know, I got into electronic music with Kraftwerk and Tangerine Dream and people like this, and I don't know, just a whole melting pot of. And then in my teenage years, my friend and I, we tried to start a band, but I was not that great at being a musician, you know. Unfortunately, I always tried to play guitar, but I could never get my hands in the right place to play the chords.
But you've got some nice guitars now, so you must be doing a fine job these days.
Well, I've worked out my own way of playing guitar, which is going back to the old blues way of doing it. You know, you tune the guitar to a chord, and then so you can just move up and down the fretboard with one finger, and you don't have to do all the fancy fiddling around looking for the right notes.
Yeah, I don't know. One time in Sweden in, what year was that? 2004. I think we played at one of our biggest shows with Skinny Puppy. It was like 50,000 people. And the band that played before us was Cradle of Filth. And I thought, like, oh my God, how are we ever going to go on after these guys? I mean, I was astounded by their musicianship and by their just their whole production. I mean, it sent me for a loop. Working with those guys must have been quite a gas because they really seemed to be quite together. Was it just a matter of recording them, or?
What I can say about when I worked with them, apathy ruled. It's like, well, he didn't do anything, so I'm not going to do anything. It was, but the whole thing revolves around Danny anyway, the singer. It's like when we made the album, and then you know, it was time for the press people to come in. It's like, okay, you're going to work, you're going to do these interviews, you're going to do these interviews. And of course, all the press people turned out and said, oh no, we only want to speak to Danny. We don't speak to any of you guys. So it's all about him. It's like a revolving door of musicians who go through that band.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seemed like that they were just like, okay, we just need the drummer that can be as fabulous as you can be with your 2 feet. I've never seen a double kick played by a drummer, so like it seemed quite effortless for him. But
was that Adrian when you were?
It would be 2004. So whatever lineup that was. I will say they were very nice guys. I was surprised, you know. Like, I mean, of course, I expected them to be nice, but they were kind of like academically nice. And then we kept on running into them on the course of their tour, of our tour, in strange, out of the way truck stops and stuff like that. So it was kind of a weird connection, but it was great. I loved it. So you enjoy working on that style of music as well, I take it.
Well, it was a learning curve, you know. I when I first heard that kind of, well, it's like I didn't really understand it, you know. So it was a question of, okay, let's do this, because at first I just mixed their EP, Cradle to Enslave or something. So I just mixed it, and then when I was asked, the A&R guy asked me as a favor to mix their record. So I mixed it, and it was like, okay, so I need to understand how they put this all together.
Yeah, really.
It was totally different to what I'd worked on before. So I, was like, okay, this is going to be intriguing to see what happens, you know?
I'm interested in how you got all the hugely gothic sounding choirs and elements in that. Is that largely just sample based, or did you actually track choirs?
Well, you use both. You use samples and then you track real people over the top to give
right. So what they have backup vocalists that they use that seem to be somewhat operatically trained. So yeah. would they just fill in and multi-track to achieve that along with samples?
Yeah, we did. And the album I made with them, we had Pinhead come in and do a voiceover, which was interesting.
Man, I mean, I was talking about sampling the other day. Someone was asking me about sampling, and being that you worked on the Mars Pump Up the Volume, I mean, wasn't that one of the first records that got hassled for having samples?
Okay, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just talking about that yesterday. So when that record came out, no one knew who it was, because basically it was released as a white label, and everyone thought it came from Detroit. That's house music. But the thing with that was you had these awful people in England called Stock, Aitken and Waterman, who they ruined the whole music industry with their kind of formulaic factory music, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Minogue and whatever else they did. I mean, they did some good stuff because they worked with Dead or Alive and people like that, but the whole pop side of that ruined the whole music industry for me. That formulaic pop thing. Okay, so in Pump Up the Volume, they used a sample from Roadblock, the Asian girl in the middle. And because all the hip hop guys were really cool about it, because it's like, yeah, you know, you're giving us, people are hearing our music through you, you know, you're giving us popularity, and people are getting to know us through your record. So they were all cool with it until Stockhausen and Waterman came along and sued for using their sample. They said, well, if you'd have asked us, we would have let you use it, you know. They're fucking ourselves, because then they brought out a record by Blue Mercedes afterwards, which had exactly the same bass line as Pump Up the Volume.
That's, I mean.
So then all the hip hop guys sued too. So everyone ended up suing for that record. And if you notice, the American version is different to the English version because it doesn't have the James Brown samples in it. They had to take them out for the American version.
So it had to be modified then.
Yeah.
Was there additional threats over time for anything else within that, or was it just like that one Stock, Aitken, Waterhausen hassle?
Stock, Aitken, and Waterman, they're the assholes.
Yeah. And it's just, why is it they wouldn't be supportive of something that was creatively using something? It kind of seems like a bit of a, yeah, well, counterproductive. Because, well, wasn't that one of the first incidences of someone identifying a sample and saying, hey, wait, stop?
I don't know, but it was the first indie #1 record. There you go.
Yeah. Wow, man. I mean, you're I'm just looking over your list here of all the things you've worked on, and it's you can do everything.
Well, okay, if you're looking at the Wikipedia page, that's not even everything that I've worked on.
Yeah, I realize that. And I'd probably find things on your official, but like even things as like surprising as like White Zombie. I mean, at the time, White Zombie was kind of like huge.
Well, okay, there's a funny story about that too, because when I did the remixes for them, I was one of the first people to do like a crossover with drum and bass and metal. So I did the remix for them. We sent it off to the A&R guy. And then he wrote back to my management company and said, we think John has made a little mistake here. The drums are going the wrong speed. And the band heard it and loved it and sacked the A&R guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very specific time period and very specific album too.
Yeah.
Album was well received.
Yeah.
Especially in LA.
It's one of the first crossovers, but bringing in drum and bass, because in America is at that time. See, at that time you had in England it was more like club and drug culture, and in America it was still like the live band and guitars. And I was traveling back and forth between America and England, so it was like two different worlds going on, But all the all the drum and bass stuff was like underground in New York, You had to go to these little clubs to hear that kind of music.
That's for sure. I mean, what was your first takes on America when you came here and actually found where music was being played? Did it answer all of your questions, or did it open a new door as to understanding America? What I'm saying is, was America what you thought it was when you came here?
Well, it's like one of the first times, I think the first time I came to work here was with a band called The Beautiful. I don't know if you remember those, but
The Beautiful. No, I don't. This is a new one for me.
Okay, so I arrived at I think it was JFK, and then Jonathan picked me up, and then we were driving into New York, and somehow we ended up in the parking lot of a baseball stadium and got lost around there. And then we drove through New York, and he said, oh, this is a Flatiron building. It's like nearly 100 years old. And I was laughing because the house I lived in England was like older than that. So it made me laugh. But then we went up to called Sweetfish up in near Albany. I was in a place called Greenwich. It's just like a barn in the middle of a patch of mud, basically. But when we were up there, we went to see Jane's Addiction, because Lush was supporting Jane's Addiction. I think it was in Albany. So, and then he took me to the
What
only
year was that?
back in like 90 or something, 91.
Oh, great.
Before 93 for sure.
Yeah, I think it's like 91, 90 or 91. Yeah, and he took me to my only experience in a drive-in movie theater. And I think we watched Edward Scissorhands there. Yeah.
So did any of the bands that you played in tour America? Did you get a chance to tour Cocteau Twins?
I only saw Cocteau Twins in London. To be honest with you, it's like 80s, 90s, and a lot of 2000. I was just working in the studio, so I didn't.
So you didn't join on stage?
No, I didn't. The first time I ever played live was like 15 years ago or something.
So you're one of these hidden names that everyone knows, and it's like, wait,
But
there
that's
he is. Finally, there he is.
you know, I was in the studio working, and it's always, you want to come on a tour with us? Like, no, because as soon as I finish this record, I got the next record to do. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I would go for, you know, be in the studio for 3-6 months, whatever, be off for a week, and then go off to the next project.
And what would you do when you take time off in the UK?
I used to spend a lot of time with my daughters then. So go home and have a real life, and then go off again. And it's really funny. I was talking to someone else about this, and everyone thought, "Oh, you must have such a glamorous life. You're traveling all the world. You're always on holiday." And it's like, holiday. I would fly into somewhere. I would go to the hotel, go to the studio, being there for 3 months, go back to the airport, and fly out. It's like I've been halfway around the world and not seen any of it. You know, it's different to being on tour when you're in a bus and you arrive in a city. But it's kind of like that because you arrive somewhere, you do your sound check. You know, you go to sleep, you play your gig, and then you drive off to someone else. So you don't actually see where you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. You
And then,
actually just know where the bathroom is in the club.
it's like, oh, you got such a glamorous life. You're traveling all the time. It's like, yep, it's fucking.
I mean, there's something great to be said about your lifestyle, though, is that I always imagined that in London at the time, there must have been just an amazing club scene with all these bands and vibrancy going on and characters. And I mean, was there, like for us, it was the Love Affair, but was there a specific club or two that was like the place where you would have your music spin?
There was the thing about London. I'm not sure what it's like now because I haven't been back there really for 15 or more years. But it used to be whatever you wanted or whatever, you know, whatever you dreamed up of wanting to see or be a part of, it was there. You could find it, you know. So back in the 80s, you know, you had punk clubs, you had, you know, new romantic clubs, you had goth clubs, you had rock clubs, you had jazz clubs, or you know, you had fetish clubs, you had bebop club, and you had all that. You could just do whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah, one time when I was in London, I was overwhelmed because it was a melody maker party, but
Right.
like everybody was there. It was like, you know, Steve Mallender or like Japan or the guys from The Cure, and I was like, my head was just like, you know, it was like it was really kind of overwhelming, you know, to someone like us, who Canadian boys. But you
Yeah,
probably just used to that, right?
okay, in the 80s, when I started working with Depeche Mode, then we would go off to like Rusty Egan's, and Rusty Egan used to DJ, you know, the Camden Palace.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, you would have Boy George walking around and Marilyn and, you know, all these, you know, people used to go and hang out. No one got hassled, you know.
Steve Strange and all that. I kind of envisioned that. Were you ever part of that club?
Sorry?
Did you ever go to that club?
Which one?
The Steve Strange, what was that club called?
No, but he used to be at the Camden Palace with Rusty Egan DJing, you know.
Okay, yeah. So that was.
The whole scene, like everyone you can think of for that whole scene, used to be there.
So would say like the guys from Bauhaus all like want to go out one night and you just like chill with them, or is just like a studio thing?
With Bauhaus, that was for me, it was more of a studio.
those guys are great musicians too. Was that always, how was that working?
Well, with them, it was different because a lot of bands came in and they had written their songs outside of the studio.
Mm-hmm.
But working with them, they came in and actually wrote the songs in the studio.
Pressure's on.
So that was different to, you know, other projects.
So I get the idea that at that time, it was kind of just like an easy thing to make a song. I mean, the times were ripe at that time. It was like, oh yeah, man, you just get the right tones and right kick drum sound and get a good vocalist, and you know, you basically could work that way. So much more difficult now, though, don't you think?
Well, not really, because now you have the technology to do anything. Like, the only limitations these days with computers is your own imagination, because you've got like apps or programs that can do nearly everything. So unless you have the vision to do it, that's the only thing that's going to limit you.
Yeah. The thing is, where do you stop? I always find that sometimes too many options like creates too many confusions.
Well, it can do, yeah, but that's what I found out before when I had too many plugins, you know, because you sit there, okay, let's try this plugin, let's try this. Like 3 days later, you just tried plugins and not done anything, you know. The technology can get in the way. And it's kind of, if you're writing stuff, I think it's better to slim down what you can use so you can actually write and not let technology get in the way. Because that happened in the like 90s and 2000s.
For sure. I mean, what DAW are you comfortable with these days for recording and working on?
Someone's ringing their bell. Oh, it's Amazon. There you go.
It's another alert from the city.
It's crazy here. Hold on a second.
This is live in Los Angeles. It's approximately 10 minutes to 5 p.m. And
we got it.
Where are you guys currently? You're in
We're in the edge of K-Town.
We're in K-Town.
K-Town.
Yeah, right off the underground.
Yeah, we're at Beverly, and we offer Beverly, so we're like East Side.
Beverly and what?
Well, I can't tell you because of all the stalkers out there.
But I'm telling you, you guys were close to the action then.
Sorry?
Right? Were you not close to the action yesterday?
That was up in Melrose.
It was on 3rd and Fairfax. It was actually at Beverly and Fairfax for a while.
Yeah, that's like 10, 20 minutes away the other way.
Okay, so you're good, yeah.
No, we're in K-Town. They don't have that over here.
Well, unfortunately, you know, the last riots that we had, K-Town was the center of it.
There you go.
Really.
New gloves.
Show and tell.
Oh yeah.
What is it? A Raven examination gloves.
Yes.
But they're all black, so they're the good ones.
Yeah, the good black ones.
You got to stay safe, so.
And you can use them, you know, across various medias.
Yeah, they're good for.
There you go.
Yeah.
Keep it clean.
We could record that. Fill it up full of air and let it out. It would be good.
Yeah, so we just got another 200 of those.
So yeah, you're like me. Every time you touch something, you got to have a glove on, and you're aware of every single thing you touch. And it's like, whoop, take the glove off after.
Well, it's, you know, they're saying it's like when you go out, when you go out and you're shopping and stuff with your gloves, don't pick up your mobile phone or anything. You just go around the store, you're shopping with your gloves. When you come outside, you know, take off the glove, throw them in the trash, not on the floor like a million people seem to be doing these days.
Yeah.
Your mask and gloves should go in the trash can, not on the floor. Because it's just like creating mess again, you know?
So I was asking you earlier, what DAW is your method of choice these days?
My door?
Yes, your DAW.
My door. I'm using, well, I mean, I've been using Logic in its incarnation since the 80s, you know?
Oh, really? Same.
Yeah, because it's actually the sequencer side has stayed more or less the same as in the beginning. I think it was called Creator when it first came out. And then it was Notator, and it's been several, you know, then Mac bought it and called it to Logic Pro. But basically, it's the sequencer package has been basically the same all the way through. They just added, recording audio and everything else they put on it.
So you're on Logic 10?
10.5, I believe.
Oh, you did it, huh? You did the 10.5.
Well, actually, it depends. On my laptop, it's 10.5. On my in the one in the studio, that's 10.4 because I haven't upgraded up to Catalina. I'm just on High Sierra.
There's all sorts of fancy updates on 10.5. All sorts of spinning wheels on stuff. Almost looks like Ableton. Like it's got clip play now. I haven't used it myself.
But that's the thing with all these programs, they all more or less do the same thing because they all, someone brings out something new, the next update that's on whatever you're using, So it's like with Pro Tools and Logic, where they were the two main things. Pro Tools is more audio and the sequencer side sucked so badly. But then Logic was the sequencer side and the audio was not great. But then basically they merged, kind of along the way. They borrow things from each other. But to me, Pro Tools has always been Slow Tools. So it's
I'm glad to hear you say that. I actually also refer to it as Scientology a bit based too. But to try to keep you in there. But yeah, I just, the way that they developed their MIDI platform was always quite secondary. So I'm with you on that.
It's still secondary for me. It's all about the audio side. The rest of it is secondary. I see it. But what I hated about Pro Tools, is you had to have all the hardware too.
Yeah, no, that's
you can use whatever hardware you want.
Yeah.
Or you can use it wherever way you want to use it. You can use it as just like a tape machine. You press play and go, or you can go in depth and sound design with it. Well, you can do whatever you want.
And so I take it you program from the start up in Logic, or do you start ever with a live performance of something?
I do. If I'm working on my own music, promoting. I've got to get you one of these caps too.
Okay.
Can't see you wearing that one anymore. You got to wear one of these.
It's a flat bill. Don't worry. No dad hat.
Kevin Keys is going to have one of these.
Oh, that's nice. Look at that.
It's the Black Needle Noise logo. So
I'm down. I have a big head though. That's my problem. Is I'm a size 8.
Same as my shoe size.
Oh, it's adjustable, yeah.
Size 8 head. I got size 8 shoes. So there you
go. my feet are stupid. I can't even buy shoes in any store. I have to get them online through a company. It's size 15.
Oh wow.
I know it's been. I realized like earlier in life that before I realized that I had feet that were big, I used to cram my feet into a size 12, just thinking, oh, it's tight, but all. And so I really screwed part of my foot up for a long time, and then my foot finally flattened out, and I think it stretched out an extra level. But let's not talk about shoes. So I've been lucky enough to visit you at your studio. It's a creative, cool environment. Do you get like a lot done there? Or you're always there?
That's where I do everything there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
you bring anything from Blackwing with you, and any sort of like old piece of gear you have to have, otherwise you weren't recording.
No, so as I tried to explain earlier, it's like I'm not a kind of musical snob. I don't have to have these certain amount of whatever to, it's like, it was funny when I used to go to studios and it's like, oh, this producer's in and he's ordered all this equipment.
Right.
But that's what they use every time. I was more excited about going to the studio and finding different things I've never seen before, different microphones,
yeah,
different old preamps or whatever. And then it's, okay, let's try this out and see how it sounds, not just use the same old shit I use on every record, because then everything sounds the same anyway.
I really like the way you're talking. This is exactly the way I would want an engineer producer that I was working with to talk. I mean, it's like someone who's stuck in their ways and doesn't like want to experiment or doesn't want to like see what a place has to offer is like kind of boring. It's inspiring to me to hear you say that.
Well, there's a studio in Prague I go to, and it's like, I'm so happy when you come because, you know, I open up my my vault of microphones and we go through this old collection I have. I said, all the new engineers come in, they just want new mics. You know, I go in there and it's like, what the fuck is this? It looks so weird, but anyway, you know?
I love that.
Yeah, such a collection of, it's the same studios Killing Joke use. But yeah, he has a weird collection of microphones, and he had one which still had the Nazi insignature on it. You know, it's like from the Second World War, and it's a kind of weird collection of stuff. So,
wonder what that sounded like. Did you try it?
Yeah, we used it on the vocals. Yeah,
that had to be haunting, though. You know what I mean? Just when some strange things happen in our lifetimes, you just think of the voices and the undertones. They're almost like souls are trapped in there.
Oh my God, yeah. Do you think you pick up any haunted stuff along the way?
Well, that was the thing with Blackwing being in an old church. It's like a lot of people heard things, saw things. You know, things would just appear in the music that.
Oh, right. We had that too in our studio. It was the singer of this band called Prism that had died, that everyone, for sure, his voice would somehow appear on things, apparently. And then all of a sudden I realized that the first song that we ever did had this weird backwards voice at the end that was from a used tape that we just flipped around. And guess whose voice it turned out to be? Him. And we were told the story like years later, and it was like, he hasn't, wait, there was a voice. Oh my God, the first song. So yeah, there was a weird vibe. There was a weird cold room in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love ghost stories. So like there wasn't a piece of hardware that you fell in love with? I mean, for me, it's the Lexicon PCM41 digital delay.
Really?
Yes.
What color was it?
It's green.
Okay.
And you know, reason is because we used it on everything, especially it was the signature sound of Ogre's vocal, and you know, it was our drum sound we would use practically everything through it. So it became like what I thought was like a little magical box. But you didn't have an effect that you would gravitate towards. You know, Adrian Sherwood, it was like he used the AMS delay, and he used as the dual sampler, and he would trigger from, you know, the board, just sending click triggers to each side and create those rhythms with one of those. I just couldn't believe my eyes when he did that.
Yeah, but the thing is when, okay, so the AMS, so all the Ethereal records was basically the AMS reverb.
Yeah.
And yeah, the AMS delay, because you had the harmonizers in it.
Yep.
Plus you had the sampler in it. So that was, you know, we could re-trigger, you know, that was the early sampler, basically. We could re-trigger snare sounds. You know, you could put the snare into it, you put a new snare or kick drums. You could, you know, it's a new sound replacer, which really came later, but we used to use that back then. And the MXR harmonizer with the first one, we had touch buttons, touch sensitive. So you could set your 4 presets, and as the song goes, you can press to change the harmony. And yeah, so that was that one, the first Lexicon, the 224, was it Lexicon reverb?
Oh, right. That, I mean, I kind of was thinking that I was hearing that in, you know, this Mortal Coil and like that sort of.
But that's all the AMS reverb.
Again, AMS.
I was talking to the guys at NAMM who are just bringing out the new version, and it's like, well, why the fuck aren't you talking to me? Because basically that was a 4AD sound, you know?
Yeah,
well, that was my sound on everything in the 80s was an AMS reverb.
So are you, I mean, I gather Blackwing had a pretty incredible console.
We used using the AMEC 2500, which had an amazing EQ because you could really change something from being one thing to another. You know, where like Focusrite, I always found was too subtle. You know, you could turn it all the way around, and then at 9 you would hear something. You know what I mean? Like the first 1 to 9, it was. But with the AMEC EQ, like you can really hear and change things. So. And that was the pre-Angela and the Hendrix. It was the one before all that. So we had those desks, which I really liked.
So you were saying a lot of the stuff was done on 8-track, but did they eventually get a 2-inch in there and so on?
Yeah, well, the first couple of years I was there, it was just 8-track, 8-track. Then we weirdly went to 2 16-tracks, so it's 32-track. But then I can't even think what the word, the thing that joined them together kept going out of sync. So every now and again, you'll be playing the songs, and then one would fast forward and one would rewind at the same time, you know? So it's like they would go. So after that, from 32-track, we went down to back to 24-track, then we went to 48-track.
2-inch.
Yeah.
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 Studer, I take it.
At the end, yeah, Studer 2-inch, yeah.
Yeah, the input amps on the Studers were nice too. They would actually have a sound of their own that I thought was quite nice.
Yeah, the only problem, because we used to use Ampex 4x6, there was always a problem because it used to lose a lot of oxide. And Studer used to blame the tape people, and the tape people blame Studer for that. But it was a great sounding tape.
Is there any plugins these days that you feel emulate the classic old days?
Not so much now. It's a different thing, you know. It's like I just use them how they sound today. You know, you can't, unless you go back to using that equipment, you're not going to get that sound really.
Right. So you feel these emulations of all the old school stuff are really just emulations as far as
yeah.
That's concerned. Yeah, we kind of feel that way too.
Back to having tubes in, you know.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing in the 80s, when everything went down to solid state, you know, to being chips, the sound kind of got smaller. You know, there's that whole period in the middle of the 80s to middle of the 90s, and especially using NS10s, everything sounds the fucking same.
Yeah.
And after that, when people started using different monitors to mix on, mixes started to sound a bit different.
So you were tied to NS10s for a while too then?
Yeah, because they were the standard reference point. You know, every studio went with NS10, so everyone mixed on those, and that's what's saying is that whole period of time where everything kind of sounded that boxy sound, you know. But
that was a hellacious period. I remember we had these what we used to call the big chuds, which are the big speakers that we really monitored, which were very good reference monitors for what they were. They were, I think, Uri 813s or something, but then we'd go down to the NS10s to do the work and be like, okay. And it was just so taxing and trying. Some of the songs we mixed, it was like a couple of days and you'd be like, oh man, I actually burned my NS10s. It's like I threw them in the yard. I grounded them to the corner by the shrubs. It's like they're not allowed inside anymore. Punish them.
But the funny thing about them, if you get the Yamaha amp that was designed to go with them, when there's not many of them around,
yeah,
they sound good. But whatever studio that you went to there, then it's 10s, it's like, oh, we're using the headphone amp to power them, or we're using this amp or that amp. And that was the problem. If you actually heard and I don't know what the amplifier is, but I'll say there's not many of them around. But
wow.
If you use 10s with those, they actually sound nice.
That's interesting to know. I was lucky enough that I met the guy, the owner of KRK, and
you see them there sitting behind you on the shelf. Okay.
Yeah, I don't use those, but
good.
We use the KRK E8Ts, they're called, and believe it or not, they were developed where he actually took a DAT of Skinny Puppy demos, which I was telling him I was blowing a lot of tweeters. And he said, well, give me a demo of the songs that are giving you the trouble. So I gave him them all, and they developed the tweeters and the resistance to my songs that I was having trouble with. So I thought, like, well, that's a great speaker to have, a ballistic speaker. And then I've used them ever since. So basically, they're kind of like, the reason why I delegated my NS10s to the army was because of that.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't like KRK speakers.
The rest of them are quite consumer level, but these are the more high level ones. very high fidelity, very loud.
Well, if he wants to send me some to try out, he's quite welcome. But
Okay. Well, I still think one day we need to get into a room together and make some sounds.
yeah, we should.
I mean, you know, I would certainly love to. So out of your entire career, what is the highlight? Is there a highlight experience album that you can say, look, I love this the most?
One of my highlights is speaking to you, Kevin Letterman.
Thank you, John.
Kevin Letterman show.
A lot when we speak, yeah. No, come on. What's an album where you said, I took a lot away from this album. I learned a lot, and I really love the album in the end. You listen to it now because of what happened. There's got to be one that you just go to.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from working on a lot of the albums because, as you noticed from my discography, it's all different kinds of music.
Yes.
So it's all different kinds of music and different kinds of people. And they're influenced by different things too. So it's always an experience making those records, you know, because it's something different from the record you made before. But I think one of the best albums I made was With a Blister, Peel and Burn with Stone Westwood.
Oh, okay. That's what I wanted to hear. And that's what I'm going to go and listen to after this.
Because that was, I think I got, unfortunately, I didn't like the mixes who mixed it, but making the record, it was a great thing of, because no one can tell what is live and what's not live on it. And it's like, I think it's one of the best albums where I made Man and Machine sound like one, and you're not really sure what is live, what's not live, what's sampled, what's played, you know?
Where did you record that?
That was in Bearsville, outside of, what's the place called? Where they had the festival. Woodstock.
Bearsville?
Woodstock, outside Woodstock.
Okay, New York.
Yeah.
So you went to a studio then and recorded in an actual studio setting then?
Yeah. It's a residential studio.
So onto tape or into computer?
It was onto tape, but actually a lot of it was put through Neve channels.
Yeah.
I was still probably using the Akai samplers back then.
Interesting.
Which I use Akai samplers way into the 2000s, you know, when all the first digital stuff came along, like the Sony 24-track digital machine. I just thought they were terrible. They sounded terrible. The converters were terrible, you know?
I mean, even I still have an Akai reel-to-reel. I'm like, I can't wait to get that.
Oh, wow. So you still have some old stuff then?
In the family.
Yeah. So if I want to work with you in the studio, you won't have any toys to bring in and surprise me? You won't have like a wasp or something?
Unfortunately, through time, I have lost or sold or given away most of my equipment. And then when I moved to America, I basically had my 2 speakers, 2 suitcases full of clothes, and a hard drive, and that was basically it.
And this beautiful face.
Oh, absolutely. John, you look fabulous, I must say.
Yeah.
You really keep yourself together, and like, I don't think you're aging. I got to figure out what you're doing.
Enjoying myself. That's what I'm doing.
I mean, there's so many more things you could talk about. Swans or Do It Emo. I love that Emo. I love Do It Emo, and just that whole side of Wire. But I feel I've racked your brain pretty good for today.
Next time, can we hit on video games?
Yes. Oh, you want to talk about video games?
I mean, he's done some soundtrack soundtrack worlds. No, well, he did Mortal Kombat.
Video game scoring, John? Thought about it?
It'd be fun for us to do some video music now.
Wouldn't it? Hey, why don't we try and figure out how we can do that together?
Yes.
That would be the new world order.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But also,
writing video game music.
Going back to Do It Emo and Graham and Bruce, I mean, we did so many different weird arty projects around then. So you'd have to remind me what that one sounded like, because, you know, I did the He Said project with Graham Lewis, and I did other stuff with Bruce Gilbert, and then we did stuff together. So yeah, there's a lot of.
Well, so anybody that, you know, is my age or whatever, you got 154 wire. From that point on, you're going to search for anything that was done. And then basically, you know, when you see that Robert Go to Bed is credited on Fireside Favorites, you see that there's a connection there. So it had to mean that anybody that was in that world, you kind of had to search for those records. And that's what we did as when we were growing up. So you were on my search list, man.
Thank you. But Robert Goes to Bed wasn't on Fireside Favorite, was it? Didn't he appear later? I'm not sure. I can't remember anyway.
What label you're asking me?
No, Robert Go to Bed. Wasn't he on later record? Was he on Fireside Favorite?
Yes, he's credited on there.
Okay.
Just one song though, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be that I was looking on the internet version of it, and it included some extra songs that maybe wasn't on the original album. You know how they do that?
No, so. I came in later because Nick Cash was the drummer.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it was.
What happened to Nick Cash then? What happened to Nick Cash? Is he still around?
Still around, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm not sure what he's doing. I haven't really spoken to him for a long time, but he's still around. And Jean-Marc Lederman, I think he was a keyboard player back then. He's still, he was like the weatherman, and now he's doing a lot of his own solo stuff too.
That must have been a big hit when Frank died. Must have been like kind of like a sad moment for when you knew that somebody's life was taken away and they're so damn creative.
Well, I didn't know because I met him out, and he was telling me about he's working with these guys and album, whatever. But then I didn't hear about it till I was working with a friend in Germany, and he said, "Oh, it's a shame about Frank." And I mean, what do you mean it's a shame about Frank? This was like 6 months later or something. It was like, "Oh, didn't you know the Fat Gadget had died?" I was like, "No, no one told me."
Yeah, it's such a shame.
It's a bit of a shock, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I pay tribute to him at least a couple times a month here at my place. So he's forever living.
Well,
Man, I'd like. Go ahead.
There's going to be a new box set, Fat Gadget box set, coming out soon from you.
So there is unreleased material from that period?
I am not sure what it consists of. I just did. I was talking to someone who's writing the liner notes for it the other week. So.
Man, I'm excited about that. I mean, if there was anything else, you know, the mega fan of me is dripping for it. But anyways, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me this afternoon with this little chat. It's been highly entertaining. And John, I think that, you know, you're such an interesting character. We could probably go on for ages. What's next for you guys? Are you going to be here in Los Angeles for an extended? This is your home now, right?
This is our home now.
This is where
where it's going to be
until we can start. Till you know the world is safer and we can start traveling again. So hopefully we're going to be in Chile in December, and then if all's well, we will be touring Africa with Fakiba.
Oh wow, that would be really. Are you going to play music over there, or is that just a personal thing?
No, it's playing music.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Going back.
Yeah, because we were in Spain in February playing. We played a couple of live shows in February, but you know, and then since then, you know, everything's changing in the world, as you know. So now, hopefully, the end of this year, beginning next year, things will open up and we can all start playing live again.
Yeah, I certainly hope so as well. Well, thank you guys very much for coming by today, and I'd like to thank everybody else for tuning in. And you know, they did this weird thing today where normally I can see questions from the YouTube.
Oh, they're changing it right now. City of Los Angeles, citywide curfew is moved to 6 p.m.
Oh, now it's 6?
Yeah, not 8. 6.
That's in like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We better go to the store.
No, that's what we had to do earlier. I was like, baby,
We got to go to the store. Big love to you guys.
yeah, you too.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much, and stay safe as well. And we'll keep everybody posted on this bad box or any new info. You shoot it past me. I'm your neighbor now, so we have to hang out.
Absolutely.
Okay, as soon as I hear something from you, I'll let you know. But I know they're working on it. It's in progress, but when it actually comes out, I don't know.
Awesome. Thank you, John Fryer.
Thank you, Kevin. Nice to be on the show.
Kevin Letterman, over and out. See you guys soon.